Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for watching. It's time for the next video in my Reaver Titan build series, and today we're working on the torso and the head. And we start the video off really exactly as I would start any build process on a Forgeworld model together, and that is test fitting things. Biggest piece of advice I can give whenever you're doing this kind of size of model is test fit, test fit, test fit before you start putting glue or anything onto anything, because you really need to know how these models fit together. Now, taking the three main pieces that go onto the back of this model, they fit together perfectly. It all went a little bit wrong though when you try and fit those three pieces actually on to the support that forms the bulk of the kind of hull and torso, because you can see here it just does not slot together. Now, I was faced at this point with a couple of choices as to whether to sort of start slicing down the main part of the body or whatever, but I thought I'm going to sit and think on it for a while and instead move on to the front part of the torso. Now, I've already test fitted this together. What I'm doing now is just scoring around the contact surfaces, making sure I've got all those contact points sort of scruffed up a little bit so that the glue will hold together better, because the resin's quite smooth. Now, I'm again putting it in and out a couple of times just to see where those contact points are, because there's no point scratching and scoring up something that you're not actually going to do. Now, I'm sticking this front piece together just with super glue. That is it, because this front piece actually fit together perfectly. Just give it a good squeeze in and it was set. So I did that because I wanted to then ponder what I was going to do with the back of the torso. Now, in between that stage, I've sort of test fit again a couple more times and decided that what I was going to do is glue the two side pieces on and then work the magic in the middle piece and fit it that way, rather than trying to cut down this lower piece to fit those two side pieces in. So you can see there, I've just scored it again, super glue and a bit of green stuff under that front section where it was not contacting that base unit properly. Done that on both sides and sealed those in. Now, before it has had time to dry, I'm then putting the center section in. So again, I've scored all the contact points up. I'm putting some green stuff in as both, because when you saw when I was testing it together, it was not touching these two side pieces. So that green stuff is being used to create contact points where there aren't contact points. Now, you see with my left hand there, I'm actually holding it open slightly to fit it in so the green stuff doesn't get shoved out of the way. I'm being quite careful when I'm going in to fit it in so that, yes, there will be those gaps, but then when we squeeze it together, the green stuff will make some contact points and hopefully centralise that piece, fill in the gaps that existed as to what we saw when we were first testing it together. So really, it's the same method I'm going to use for most pieces in this build. Super glue, green stuff, and making sure you've prepped the area it's going into. Now, I'm not sticking down this top panel, I'm just test fitting it again prior to letting anything set, because if you've done something wrong at this stage with those two back pieces and you've got them in the wrong angle, you could take them off before everything starts to set in the first sort of 30 seconds to a minute. Now, I'm not going to show you fitting the weapons, because in my first, well, not first video, but video before this, I'm showing the weapons and how I've mounted them. Now, when I did this build, I did build the weapons first, but didn't work on the mountings. Then I did the torso, which you're seeing here, and that's when I then, you know, worked out how the weapons were going to get mounted on and everything. So, although I did bits of the build sort of concurrently, this is the order I did it in, and I haven't started the legs at all at this stage. And I wanted to get this torso built, because then that would then give us a good guide with the legs about how we're doing it. So you see there, hopefully, well, I've been talking over the background, I've taken that side panel where the weapons are going to hang from and realised that that's a lot of weight's going to be going to those areas. So I've literally used a pin drill to work out where the hole's going to go, drilled a hole through the side of the torso, then used that same drill bit to put a mark where the hole needs to be so it matches up with this pod at the side, and then drilling. Now, for instance, I'm using, it's a 4mm drill bit, so I'm using a hand drill and a power drill because I've only got a 3mm hand drill bit. By the by, it doesn't really matter what size you use, but it is because I went to my local DIY store, Wix, and they had some 4mm aluminium rod that was quite easy to saw through and relatively cheap. I think it was about £3 for a couple of meters, so it wasn't too expensive. So I'm using that rod really just as an extra bit of weight and support for these weapon pods that are going to hang off there, because a lot of weight's potentially going to go through. I think it would probably be absolutely fine with just super glue and green stuff, but if I'm honest, when I've done Titan builds on the channel before, everyone keeps saying you need to pin, you need to pin, you need to pin, despite the fact my Warhound Titan that I've had for a number of years now has got no pins in it whatsoever, and it's been absolutely fine. You know, why not? This is a big, expensive model. You may as well take that extra bit of time. And I'm kind of thinking, do you know what? They might be right. Maybe this will make the model last 15 years instead of 10, something like that. But actually, it does give an extra sense of security. So I will bow to the wisdom of people that say pin everything. And to be honest, it didn't take me a great deal of time. And I think that's what I was afraid about prior, was just about the time it would add to the build. But really, it didn't. Now, as you see in there, I put the side pod on with super glue and the green stuff again to fill in the gaps, and now took a time before I stuck anything else on to go around the whole model and just put some green stuff into those areas where there's gaps showing where the contact points haven't made it, and this will set absolutely rock solid and really seal, you know, the whole piece together. It's also a chance to go around as you do and clean up a little bit extra. See my initial cleanup video, do an extra clean when you're putting these pieces together. Now we're putting the under panel and the top panel onto this kind of cockpit area. And the top panel wasn't too bad, but that under panel, if you've seen, was really badly warped and was not going to fit whatsoever onto that under panel. Now I'm not going to show you, but basically what I've done is I've had this in boiling water for a minute or two. I'm just drying it off now because I don't want to get everything completely soaked. I've already test fitted it onto here. So I've had it in boiling water for a couple of minutes, taken it out with a pair of tongs, and then folded it or pushed it into shape, so then it'll reset in a shape that will make all these contact points touch. So obviously that, as you saw it initially, there was no way you could have ever stuck that together. A little bit of green stuff into the hole, and I found I didn't need to use any green stuff anywhere else because it had bent and curved in shape really well, as the super glue was getting stuck to my fingers there. It was shaped really well so that I didn't feel the need to put any kind of extra stickiness in there apart from a tiny little bit of green stuff at the side. Working on top panel in the same way. Couple of sausages of green stuff on the two areas you've seen there, and a little bit on the support points, and then just sealing that down. Now you could just do this with super glue, but I just find having green stuff on there, once it's set, it sets absolutely rock solid, and I am not concerned about having this build open. If you were wanting all these panels removable, you'd have to stick the bottom panel on. The top panel, you know, you could leave this removable, and you could leave then the actual shroud that goes over the full thing removable as well. But I wanted it all just sealed in, really for absolute solidity, and I'm not bothered about painting the interior. And we'll touch on that in another video, I'm sure. So putting on the vents at the back, again, same techniques, just clean up a little bit, score the two surfaces, and it's just a bit of glue to glue those together. Now onto the cockpit, you'll see that I am not putting in the princeps or the two gunnery officers that kind of go in there. I am going to be gluing this shut, and I'll use the interior bits for another project. I know you can paint these things open. I've just got no desire to do it, and personally I'd rather have the security of all these pieces being affixed to the Titan and knowing it's, you know, solid for the future. But the head goes together really easily. I didn't have to really do any kind of fixing of warpage or anything. A little bit with the cables on the side, they didn't fit onto any of them without any bending, and what I didn't want to do is just force bend them in and glue them, because then that'll be a lot of pressure and they might pop off at some point. So again, into the boiling water once I've test fitted them everywhere for a minute or two, and then they bent really nicely to shape, and then I could just glue them on with, again, a little bit of green stuff, a little bit of super glue, and they sealed on really nicely. So that was the head done. Now I know I probably shouldn't stick all these pieces together. It probably would be a lot easier to paint if I didn't glue the head onto the torso now. So if you're bothered about that, what you could do is put a bit of blue tack or something on the contact points and then spray it up, and everything in the contact points is still be visible. But for me, I just thought, you know, I wanted to stick it on. I know it might give me some trouble later down the line in terms of the painting process, but I decided, let's clean it up and let's glue this head onto the torso, because I'm all about getting it in big solid blocks, and I'm not particularly a fan of painting in subunits. I am going to paint in some subunits for the Titan, but not right down to armour panels and those kind of things, so it's going to be built as a whole block. Now it's about getting the top piece on when we're completely comfortable, and then before I did this, by this point I'd got the legs actually built separately, so I'd put this to one side for half a day, built the legs, put the top on and put the weapons on, as you'll have seen in the video, and it was time to properly glue this torso on. Again, similar principle, glue and green stuff, and then we're left with this finished piece, all sealed together really solidly. You'll see now the arm kind of parts where the weapons are going to hang off. That was covered in the weapon video, and really it's put together really nicely. It's really solid. I've put on obviously the void shields at the top, which I forgot to film completely, and didn't film putting the grill on either, but there's some nice little pieces, went on really easily, just again with that bit of super glue, and we're left with a big impressive chunk of resin ready for its legs to be slotted in. In case you're wondering what the hole drilled into the bottom is, that was when I was testing the size of the rod that I was going to use, and chose to drill it into an area of the model that I wasn't going to be using. So really the only other thing you can do at this point is put on the armour panels that go on the top. I'm not gluing these on just yet. When I come to customise the Titan to Nurgle, they're probably going to get glued on at that point. But yeah, that is the torso done. It's leg day next time, so keep an eye on the channel, and I hope you enjoyed that.